Have a great show.
All right. Welcome everyone to Veritas Live. I'm your host, Demetrius Malbro, and today we are going to talk about reducing risks with a red team. And almost 9 out of 10 companies were hacked in the last 24 months. And that's a ridiculous number for me. But also, we would like for you to let us know exactly where you're watching from. It's always super nice to see exactly from around the world where you are watching from. So please type that in the chat right now. We would love to see that. And to also make my job easier, we do have Ben Spickert, who is our community manager. He'll be popping in later on, and he will also be fielding your questions in the chat. So once again, don't be shy to type in that chat window. Now, I would like to introduce our esteemed guest. We have Walter, who is a senior vice president of engineering. And we also have Sonali, who is the engineering director of software quality assurance. So welcome to the both of you. And before we actually get started, we like to open things up with an icebreaker just to kind of get everyone laughing and get everyone on the same page here. So is there a movie that you've seen that reflects the reality of cybersecurity, threat actors, or maybe even ransomware? And what about you, Walter, on that question?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Even at the risk of dating myself here quite seriously, there was actually in the series of Die Hard number 4, I believe it was all themed around what happens if a massive attack is happening to the infrastructure. So the movie was really portraying an idea of a hacker getting hold of all the critical infrastructure from transportation to telecommunications to power, shutting everything down, obviously for its personal gain. But even though it's not really reflecting reality of how things are working, the vision of having such an attack can actually be quite scary and, kind of stuck with me a little bit, to be entirely honest. So as I see the real life attacks going down, we got to keep in mind that the software systems run our life. They control everything. The Zoom meeting to the ability to place a phone call to having food on the shelf. So it's actually quite scary if you watch that.
And I am still thinking about the debate whether or not Die Hard is a Christmas movie or not. So
for me, it is, but that one wasn't.
we'll leave that one. I guess we'll wait until December to answer that one. Sonali, if you've thought about that, what have you seen as far as a movie that kind of reflects the reality of a cybersecurity threat?
I think we might have lost Sonali here. I hope it wasn't an attack.
Well, for me,
regular bandwidth.
I'll answer for her. For me, it's the Matrix. I mean, every last Matrix that was ever produced, Morpheus and the entire plot and just characters within the Matrix is super amazing for me. And so that definitely is my number one movie when it comes to cybersecurity and hacking and all of those nice and interesting things that we are fighting so hard to stop. Now, I appreciate that actual response, Walter, and we'll move right on here and really talk about today. Today we're going to actually discuss the importance of cybersecurity penetration or pen testing across numerous technologies within your environment. And you may be wondering, if you're not familiar, pen testing is used to stress test an organization's cybersecurity readiness and also highlight the vulnerability. So this brings me to our very first question. And Walter, I'm wondering if you're ready for the question. I'm sure you are, but I want to ask you, why do organizations implement red teams anyway? And what is a red team?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, we all need to basically constantly test ourselves whether or not we are ready for a potential attack. Attacks, as you said, are happening constantly. You said 80% have been under attack. I think we're probably under attack right now, but because we got the good IT practices, they are not getting through, right? So what are the red teams doing? red teams take the approach of the mindset of the hacker, right? Where the rest of the IT group has the mindset of, how can I make this work? How can I keep the service up? How can I give a good experience to my users? Red teams are trying to destroy that. And they take the approach of, if I'm a hacker, what would I do? How can I be creative to penetrate, right? And doing this on a constant basis for software manufacturers like ourselves on our own products, as well as IT groups, to make sure everything they're using in the environment is set up in a way that it's not easy to get in, is very important. It's an interesting aspect, though, that I believe that the scope of red teams so far has really been about finding the hole in the fence. So kind of, we try to create a perimeter that you cannot get in unless you're authorized. And they are basically probing and testing every window, every door, making sure nothing opens up without the proper authorization. Now, the problem we see in the last year specifically, or even the last 2 years, is that we need to go beyond this. So we need to actually think about, what if the guy comes in the front door? I was just chatting with Sonali. If somebody wants to get into this building and steal something or do harm to the building, well, they could try to, open the door forcefully, break a window, do any of those things. A much easier way is, there's people going in and out with a badge, just run behind them, right? Or worse, I go for a lunch break, clip off my badge and use my badge to get in, right? So the same applies in the IT world. We are facing the problem today that most attacks are coming in with fully authorized credentials. So meaning they stole the credentials, they come in with those credentials. And so what I believe what we need to do here is, and the red teams need to also think about, is, don't worry about how I got into the authorized access. Can you pressure test the system? What happens if you do have it? How much damage can I do? How big would the blast radius be if I obtain admin credentials? And I think Sonali is back on. She magically escaped the problem. And Sonali, I think your team specifically is focusing on that question, right? Assume you have admin credentials. What can you do? And I think you're testing this in our Red Lab. Maybe you want to share a little bit about that.
Absolutely, Walter. And see, not everyone possesses the mindset of a hacker, right? And which is why closely monitoring the behavioral patterns of ransomware and viruses is essential. In many stages of the product lifecycle, engineers primarily focus on safeguarding their product's surface areas to minimize the risk of ransomware attacks and whichever bad thing can happen. However, in the Red Lab, engineers are operating under the assumption that the product deployment is already under attack. We have seen numerous virus samples that we have let loose in the Red Lab. They have destroyed our product left and right. Now, this proactive stance enabled us to engage in reverse engineering and assessing how the product responds in such a scenario, right? So that's more of a coming in exactly opposite direction, rather than thinking, oh, how do I protect my surface? You come from the backside and say, hey, I'm already under attack. What do I do?
Exactly.
Okay. And I just want to make this comment. I am really glad why Sonali is back now. So that's the importance of having a backup. So we are back up and running now. Sonali is here. And I do appreciate your response and you being back as well. And just to mention in the chat, please go ahead and type your questions once again. We love your engagement. And it is amazing to see people from London, Canada, Saudi Arabia, South Africa, and even India. So I appreciate the global participation. Now, another really super important question that I would like to ask, and the audience would also be ready for this question, and that is, why is it important for technology partners or even suppliers to have pen testing as part of their solutions? Walter,
so look, we basically want to ensure that our attack surface is minimized, right? And it's not just about, accidental attack surfaces. It's also something, sometimes on purpose, we build in convenience features, right? We want to make it easy for you to get things done. So we basically allow you single sign-on, the credentials are being, passed along with one fingerprint or authentication, everything turns on for me and I'm good to go. That's great and convenient and we all love it. The problem is we need to do the threat modeling and the pen testing and the hacker thinking of how much damage could that do, right? And how can we guard against this? How can I give you the nice convenience feature of being able to do your job more easily, not having to constantly re-authenticate yourself or whatever else we're building in there, while keeping you safe? And that's not an easy trade-off. So for us in the software industry, as we build those features, right? Many of our customers, I know it, of saying, well, you changed your software, now I have to do all of those things. We had to, because we need to basically assume we're being attacked. As we said a minute ago, you will walk in with my credentials. How can I keep this under control? You cannot do too much damage, right? And finding that right trade-off is not always easy. And I know Sonali and I were talking about this just a little bit ago. We had to make changes to our software and to the recommendation of what customers need to watch out for that make life a little bit more inconvenient, but are very crucial to stay safe. And Sonali, I think you had a couple of good examples there for what we mean by this, how it's important for us to find the right trade-off between security and convenience.
Absolutely. And we introduced, right, to enhance the data resiliency and protecting against the data tampering. Veritas had introduced an immutable storage solution, ensuring that once data is written, it cannot be altered or it cannot be deleted. Now someone can say, hey, it's my data and you are making me uncomfortable, right? So sort of that is
Yeah.
Small technical difficulties. I think what Sonali was gonna explain was, for example, when we write data backup copies to disk stores, it's very convenient if you can manipulate the copy. You can say, oh, they went to the wrong device. Let me delete it here, move it somewhere else, right? That's a convenience feature. If we introduce what's called immutable storage, that is write once, read many, and we put a retention lock on there so you cannot change it after the fact, you cannot delete it, makes it more secure. But now you have the difficulty of your administration gets more difficult. If a mistake occurred, you can no longer just go in and delete it. It's one example. Another example that Sonali raised with me just a minute ago was when you install Windows servers, you frequently point out those Windows servers are actually exposing like network shares, their C drive for remote administrations. You don't have to go to the box. You can just remote administrate if you have admin rights. Well, those turn out to be attack vectors in the red lab, right? So we just see those convenient features being turned against you. And so very important for us as software vendors to constantly have a group of people that has the hacker hat on, try to see what can they exploit, how can they get in, what kind of things are safe to do and not safe to do. And so Nali is back. I'm just telling you a story about the Windows share there.
Absolutely. And this research, right, that is happening, Walter, in the Red Lab, wherein one of the virus we were testing and we just let loose it on the net backup client. Now we assume that it will destroy the client and we will be done. It actually found its way from client. It moved to the server, and we were wondering what happened. And the credentials and the network dump and the memory dump, everything we analyzed and we realized, oh, shoot, we should protect ourselves from this particular small aspect, right? That is where the overall innovation is happening.
Yeah.
And you know what, all of this is really scary. And I remember reading a news article this morning. A company was hacked, and of course the backups were also encrypted along with ransomware, but they were able to recover within about 12 hours, but they still had like a large gap within their backups. I think they ended up losing about a month of data that was unaccounted for. But let's talk a little bit about AI and ML. It's a very hot topic, artificial intelligence and machine learning. How will AI and ML change the landscape of pen testing and also red teams for the future?
So I think it's the IML cuts both ways, right? It makes it easier for us to set up new pen tests, execute them, set up new defenses, take advantage of the IML to really find out if we're in attack, even if the attack is just very subtle and not as visible as before. Cuts both ways because the same generative AI we can use, bad guys are basically getting access to, and it gets much, much easier for them to produce new attack vectors, new malware, new ways of hacking us, right? So what I believe the biggest concern I'm having is that this wheel of new ransomware, new malware getting into the system, us having to respond to it is going to accelerate. It's going to spin faster and faster. And we've already, you just mentioned this, right? We've seen more attacks now against the backup infrastructure. And we see the attacks changing rapidly. And so Sonali and the team actually came up with excellent solutions to that. And maybe Sonali, you want to explain a little bit of how we take advantage of this solution to really keep up with that very fast pacing increase of attack vector changes.
Absolutely. And Walter, like, just between 2022 and 23, last 1 year, we are seeing that the attack vectors are changing, right? Every product today is AI and ML has become DNA of every product today, right? And the best part is, independent of bad guys knowing using the AI ML to hack us, the best part is we know our products very well. It can monitor, the AIML can monitor the software and systems, and it can detect the deviations from normal patterns. And when our product behaves unusually, we can trigger alerts, right? So recently, as an example, we introduced an extension that alerts the user when a backup client is exhibiting specific attack pattern during a backup operation. Now that's just the smallest example in the world. Every day, while we are attacking our own product with several different malware families, we are realizing that there is a scope for innovation. In every possible way, there is a scope for innovation. And that's where we are not stopping at only doing a 6-month release and saying, okay, you will get your extension after 6 months. We have started monthly extensions, and wherever possible we are putting it in Alta View and we are putting it on ITA, right? So sort of lot of results are coming from Red Lab, which we are trying to utilize and seeing where can I help my customer at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I just think it's awesome that we have a red team in place to really make sure that we are at the forefront of really kind of hitting the hackers where it hurts, right? Because if they're able to get in, then we're right there in order to circumvent that and also to allow customers to be resilient as well. And one thing I do want to do right now is bring in Ben. I mentioned him earlier. He is our community manager because I think we have a question from the audience. Ben, where are you?
Hey, everybody. This is Ben. I'm calling in from Raleigh, NC, and I've been monitoring the chat. And before I get to a few questions here, just wanted to make the comment that it's really scary that people are coming in with full credentials and attacking, and that there's holes in the fence. How can we keep the fence closed in? I don't know, but we might as well keep trying the best we can. But anyways, we have a question from the chat here. This question is from Kastab. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. But how much importance should we be giving to attack surface mapping when it comes to pen testing?
So, absolutely. I think that is a big piece, right? So we call it threat modeling, right? So basically, before we attempt the pen testing, we also do a threat modeling, right? Because it goes when you architect a solution, you need to worry about what attack surface do you expose? How could you minimize your attack surface? And in case you notice that I went to the side, this was not an attack. This is just my light sensor turning off my lights in the office. So I want to point out I'm not under attack. But it really starts with that. We need to have security teams think about threat modeling. How could possibly an attack being launched. Once you think you got it right, this is when your pen team or red team comes in and prove you wrong, right? It's really a two-step process. And the other thing that you run into is, even if you got your threat modeling right, as I was pointing out, the convenience features could end up causing you bigger problems. So again, pen teams need to not only worry about, did we leave any door open? Assume for a second that you got in anyway, explore the blast radius. How much damage can you do, right? Because that in itself is one of the biggest concerns I'm having, of us having to rethink how we do things. And, all my career, I've been long enough that security started off with not being there, and you could log into every system from any place because the credentials were shared. There was no problems. To all of a sudden, it's getting locked down and locked down and locked down more. And now you have 2 factors and 3 factors, and God knows what you all have to do, right? It's an inconvenience, but it's there for a good reason. So please keep in mind, threat modeling, attack surfaces, this is where you start off, understand those, then see how much damage you can do despite having all of that locked down. I think it's very important. So, Sonali, any more thoughts on that one?
Yeah, and another aspect that we have learned, right, over this journey, we used to give a third party independently to do the pen testing. So what we have realized is technology partners should also take help from independent third parties, right, to add credibility to the security claims. You never know what you are missing, right? And customers can trust those results more when they come from an unbiased source, right? That is another aspect we have learned. We have been using certain tools to do pen testing, right? And automated pen testing, but we hired certain engineers, security engineers from well-known companies, which are like well-known AV companies. And that proved, the manual pen testing has proved to be a big success from our perspective, wherein, they are really learning the product and doing manual pen testing. That has given us a lot of issues, and we were able to solve them actually.
Yeah, I really feel that pen testing is really more of an art than a science, right? Because ultimately you gotta be really creative to come up with a different way of trying to get in. And getting fresh perspectives, getting fresh set of eyes, different people in every now and then, it's gonna show, they're gonna find things that the other guy overlooked, right? So gotta keep that in mind too.
And one thing that I learned, especially from this show, is, and I'm sure you may have heard this before, security is a team sport, right? You need everyone on the same page. Everyone has to do their part, has to continue to educate themselves on how to best secure and lock down your environment and not click on things that would be considered phishing attempts. But we will get to everyone's questions later. So if we didn't get a chance to answer your question, we will be sure to respond and reply later to make sure we answer your questions. And also, really quick, final and closing remarks from Sonali, because we have a blog post that we will be linking down below much later as well. And so, Sonali, any closing remarks?
So what Veritas is doing is we want to share more and more information with all of you, right? At the end of the day, there is a lot of research happening in a tiny lab here. This information needs to go out to the market, right? So we have started writing blogs. We are started writing a lot of white papers around this for the good practices that all of us can follow. At the end of the day, the speed at which security industry is going, it's unbelievable. It's like every day morning you have 1,000 malware samples that you can attack your product with. So what we are hoping, and I know, Demetrius, you have been a very vocal person there, where a lot of blogs, videos you are publishing. This is all done so that all of you can benefit from it.
Absolutely. And closing remarks for you, Walter.
Yeah, look, as Sonali was saying, we are creating a lot of content. We encourage you to please pay some attention to that. And Dimitris, you're right. This is a team sport. It takes all of us, right? We're working with government agencies. We're working with external security companies. but we need our customers to also participate, right? And our users. They please need to pay attention to this, take advantage of the excellent work that Sonali's team is doing, implement best practices to stay safe.
All right. And also, I just want to bring attention once again to Sonali's blog. It's called Ransomware Fears Red Lab. Check that blog post out. It is a fantastic post. Also, we do have a white paper, as was mentioned as well, on Veritas Red Lab. You can read all about the Red Lab, and it is around developing and validating malware defense. And one of my favorites is a ransomware timeline that was created. It's on the website, and it's also an assessment tool. So the links are all below. And I really enjoyed this episode, and also seeing each and every one of you from all around the world on this super important and great, amazing topic that we chose here. Everyone, make sure that you tune in for the next show. We have the next Veritas live episode coming on October the 24th. So be sure to mark your calendars. And until then, stay secure and back up often.